Yeah,
I think Steve went to the restaurant. So I'm waiting for him to
Okay.
come back before I start.
I think Caitlin has us live and ready to go, so.
Okay.
Be easy peasy whenever you're ready.
Folks in the audience, we have one board member using the restroom. I'm gonna wait until he comes back and then I'll call the meeting to order.
Oh,
We might have to talk about the same thing.
Oh, I was just curious.
I was gonna wait a minute, but
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's why I was just curious. We have numbers.
The grapevine goes all squirrely.
it's always a guessing game. Where
it's musical chair.
Beth throws out some dice.
See who you put where.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I didn't mean it was so long ago. Getting on meetings, and people are like, "Oh, happy nice holidays." And I'm like 4 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
All right, happy new year to all. Welcome back. This is the December meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors. That's what did I say? December. Okay, well, we're in January.
We're in a new year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Beth. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's nice to see all of you. We do have a few absences tonight due to illness and folks who are dealing with some work matters late in the day. I'll ask our board secretary to go ahead and call the roll.
Chair Kaplan,
Here.
Vice Chair Kleist,
Here.
Linda Bailey, Brandy Collins,
Here.
Kendall Taylor,
Here.
Matt Harris, Hillary Orr,
Here.
Ajay Thomas,
Present.
Marat Omey, Jesse O'Connell.
So Matt and Linda were granted excused absences. Brandy was given permission to join our meeting virtually. And Marat is going to join us around between 6 and 6:15. He's coming to another work meeting. We'll go ahead and move into the public comment portion of the meeting. I have a statement that is consistent with the board's approved policy on public comment period. So I'll go ahead and read that before I start recognizing speakers. And it reads as follows. We are about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. All dashboard meetings include a public comment period at the beginning of the meeting, as we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our riders and community members. The board is here to listen. However, please keep in mind that public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns or questions tonight. We take any concerns and questions seriously and need sufficient time to process and research any issues if need be. Board members will respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. Please note that personnel matters are not a part of the public comment period. However, please know that we take any personnel questions seriously. You are asked to contact the Dash administration with any such concerns. We ask that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. Further, we ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. The board will take pre-registered speakers first, and they have a sign-up sheet with 4 names on it. And then I will invite others who wish to speak who may not have pre-registered. For future meetings, you may pre-register on the website dashbus.com on the board of directors page. I will now call the first speaker. Please remember that each individual speaker is allotted 3 minutes for your comments. If you are speaking on behalf of a neighborhood, civic association, or unit owners association, please identify yourself accordingly, and you may ask to be recognized for 5 minutes. I will call the first speaker I have is Jim Murphy, and we have a podium here if you'd like to use that or speak from your chair, whatever more comfortable. Jim, good evening.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, McBaker, Swan, members of the board, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I'm Jim Murphy, out of the 326 North Pitt Street. Kara Fast, who is here on my right, and I are co-coordinators for the ad hoc North Pitt Street Planning Group. As you know, our group has requested that the Dash stockholders modify a decision reached by the board on June 6th, 2022. That decision was to realign Dash Line 34 in North Fairfax Street to North Pitt Street for the crossover of Pendleton Street. Dash bylaws allow the stockholder to conduct such a review and to make a modification to a board decision if they choose. Still, I'm mindful of the observation Chairman Kaplan made at the end of the June 6th meeting. Paraphrase, he observed that Dash has had a process for appeals such as ours for many years, and that to his knowledge, no appeal has ever been successful. Indeed, the mayor at a neighborhood town hall meeting in late November offered a similar observation. That history is a high bar, but we have a strong case and no precedent. Mrs. Fast and I have met with 4 stockholders thus far. A letter to the stockholders in September was 42 pages. Too long to expect stockholders with all their family and work and council responsibility to have very much time for our issue. Pictures help, and we've been using an improved set of graphics to illustrate our point. Which brings me to this meeting. Councilman Chapman advised us last week to reach out to the Dash board as well as the stockholders. Made sense to us. We shared the insight with the stockholders to ensure they understand the issues, rely on the resident experts for information and explanation. Clearly, the experts of the Dash general manager and staff and the Dash board members. We know that the June 6th decision is old business. Nonetheless, we want to schedule a meeting with each of you at a time of your convenience. Early next week, I will somehow get in the distribution to you, set of our graphics. I will include a copy of our 17th September letter to the stockholders. So please consider both sets of materials a read ahead for the meeting we hope to have with you. You may wonder why in heaven's name are we doing all this? Simply
30 seconds remaining.
Springs eternal, that we will change some minds, and that as advisors to the stockholders, you will represent our case in a balanced way, and therefore possibly influence the stockholder to vote to modify the June 6th decision. Thank you.
And if you have any further email correspondence with us, quite best to send to our board secretary, Ms. Ravelis, and she can distribute to us. That'll make it easier if you.
I will, thank you.
Next speaker, Stan Stemp.
Hi, board. My name is Stan Stemp. I live at 500 Wood Street. And I would be in the corner where there's 2 bus coming and going bus lines would be there. My headboard and my 2 daughters' headboard would be 10 feet from where the buses will come by. I can give you numbers, I can give you all type of stuff, but right now I'm going to appeal to common sense. I want you to think about why is it that Dash decided to not move the line for the entire road of North Pitt. Decide, oh yeah, something really is wrong. Let's move it. But they left it on 1 block. Why? Already through that entire road, it was going to be an added of very little bridesmanship. Not included, but they left 1 block there. 1 block. Why? And they might tell you, well, the numbers say this, numbers say that. Really, seriously, appeal to common sense. No one there ride the bus. I actually ride the bus. And I walk 2 blocks, and I love it. Right there, no one else rides it. In fact, it's going to create a whole bunch of problems with the entry and exit of Harris Teeter that's right there. That's also where trucks stop and deliver for that building that's right there. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be terrible. And I appeal to you guys to be curious, ask questions. Why were they so adamant at first that it could not be moved? Then, oh yeah, let's move it. But not 1 block. It would be very simple and common sense again to move that line 1 direction, 2 streets over. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stemp. Next speaker, Arthur, is it Cepeda?
Cepeda,
Cepeda.
thank you. We reside at 610 North Pitt. I follow on the previous speakers' concern. We welcome the opportunity, or we welcome the compromise extending down North Fairfax, but it's that 1 block, 600 block North Pitt, which is heavy residential. Second point I'll make is it's been a while since I've worked my slide, but doing a north turn from Pendleton onto Pitt, I just don't see how a bus can successfully make that turn staying in the northbound lane of Pitt. The only feasible alternative I see would be having to do some sort of curb cut onto the new block, the parking, I don't know what we call that, extension of both sides of Pendleton and Pitt. So in summary, we're just asking for one block. That's it. Push it further down North Fairfax. There's no residential parking or no residential homes on Fairfax on that part. The plan as proposed takes it right down residential houses on North Pitt, 600 block. Then the final one is the left-hand or the right-hand turn from Pendleton onto Pitt. I just don't see how realistically that's going to work. And if they try to do it, it will result in just potential collisions, traffic jams, all around confusion. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker, is it Maureen McDowell?
McMahon.
McMahon, okay, thank you.
Well, I didn't plan on speaking, but I have real firm ideas and feelings about what's going on. I live on 614 North Pitt Street. And out my living room windows, I see, and I wish you guys could come over. I'd fix some tea or something, and or a glass of wine, whatever. And we could look out that window and see what's going on. FedEx, Amazon, I don't know. I often think I can't even picture how a bus will get smoothly. Now, eventually, and also we have moving vans coming into the apartments across the way. And one day they were out there for several hours and I can't understand. I don't know how the bus could possibly have gotten through there. I don't know. Also, I can't understand why this one little block, which is residential, and some of my neighbors have small children and everything. And this little one block is being totally changed. And I'd like to see something. I walk to the gym every day now, the Fort Hill. It's now called One Life. And which makes me nervous, one life to live. What are they talking about here? But I go along with them. But I go down there and I see the bus drivers and I wave to them and they're happy as they can be. And they're going up and down Fairfax. And I know they have 2 one-way streets that are right up the way for them. And Madison and is it Montgomery? Montgomery. Okay, so those are as I say, I would have had a very nice planned speech if I had known I was going to talk tonight, but living there, I'm probably typical, would you say? Okay, so thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am.
30 seconds remaining.
I'll ask staff if we have any pre-registered speakers who are joining us on the Zoom.
There's one hand raised, Jim Durham.
Okay, we'll go ahead and acknowledge Mr. Garman. Then if anyone else in the room who hasn't spoken wants to be recognized, I'll recognize you after we give them him.
All right, Jim, you are able to talk now.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to share with the board an opportunity, I think, for Dash. On the 1st of February, the city's Department of Community and Human Services are moving to the Mark Center. This is part of an overall consolidation of health services at the Mark Center. The health department, which is currently located at King and Beauregard, will be moving in March, potentially as soon as 1 March. That date hadn't been set. But what a great opportunity, because the people who use those services also overlap a lot with the people who would normally ride the bus or would benefit from having bus access to their healthcare and health advice services. So I just want to make you aware of it. Should you not already have communications plan worked out with DCHS and the Virginia Department of Health at Alexandria, there might be an opportunity to get some more people riding the bus. Thank you.
And thank you for the suggestion. All right, I'm going to ask now if there's anybody else in the room who'd like to be heard. Come on up, and if you would just state your name and before you start speaking, you'll have 3 minutes on the clock.
Greetings, my name is Barbara Matthews. I live at 621 Tivoli Passage, also in the neighborhood that will be affected. I mostly got questions. I share my neighbors' concerns and objections to the shift in the route, but I stand mostly to ask questions. I'm wondering, what kind of data did the company use to justify the shift? Did many of these decisions were made before all those residents moved into the area at the end of Fairfax Street, here that used to be the Bastille? There's a lot of people who I think have not even been consulted about what their needs might be. I know I never received a survey or any kind of request for information from the city or from the bus company. And I would like to know, have you surveyed the ridership? Have you surveyed the people on the commercial streets? So the commercial streets are North St. Asaph and Fairfax. Have you surveyed the residents in North Old Town? Have you reached out to the Old Town North Civic Association? I don't know any of these answers. The first I heard of any of this is when one of our neighbors started collecting his own data, but that's different because one, that was done after the fact, and two, that was not done by you. And if you're going to make those kinds of significant changes, particularly shifting a bus route from a commercial area to a residential area, I would like to know why. Where's the data for it? That's my big question, and I would be very grateful if the city could also help us, city being shareholder, single shareholder. If the city could please also help us in asking those questions and getting the information. And if you haven't done a survey, I really strongly recommend that you do, because the population has changed dramatically in the last 3 years in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? All right, public comment is closed. Thank you all so much. So let's see, we do 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a quorum now, so we can do the minutes. So the minutes from the December meeting were included in the board packet for your review. Are there any changes to the minutes as they were presented? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt them.
Motion to adopt?
Moved by Steve, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Jesse, all in favor? Aye. Any
I
opposed? Any abstentions?
abstain.
Jay abstains, everyone else votes in favor. Chair's report. I have just one item to share, which is that the city has announced the stockholders meeting that will be, which is held annually in February per our bylaws. It's going to be on February 14th at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers. That's a great day for everyone to bring their significant others to come and enjoy a conversation with Dash. I will be there. Mr. Baker will be there, as will some of our staff who participate in that. We anticipate it to be about a half hour. It's also going to be broadcast, as all council meetings are, through other channels on Zoom and on the public access channel as well. So you don't have to be in the chamber. I do have one ask from members, though, because we're finalizing the presentation that will go forward for the stockholders meeting. It actually has to go up, I believe, by the close of business on Friday. And so included in that are the reappointment of board members. And so I need to know if anybody does not want to be included on the slate for a presentation to the stockholders for another one-year term. You need to let me know by Friday afternoon if you're going to be stepping down. And if you would, if anyone is, if you would also CC Beth on that communication, just so she's in the loop. We don't have to kind of scramble to connect with each other Friday afternoon if there are any changes. I'll make sure to reach out to the folks who aren't here tonight, just so that they are aware of that deadline as well. But we'll talk about that again next month, and encourage all of you who are able to attend either in person or virtually. It's always an interesting conversation with the stockholders. Okay, that's what I have. I was noticing, and I appreciate staff even put my bullet items in the report on the prior slide, and that was very nice. Thank you. We'll move into the TNS report. I'll recognize.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I want to continue to keep you all updated about the Duke Street in Motion project. As you know, this is our project to look at Duke Street and redesign that corridor for high capacity transit. And so I've been keeping you up to date on kind of the progress of this. We did our second round of community engagement in the fall. Had some discussions with the advisory group about that engagement and the results of that. And ultimately in December, the advisory group voted on 2 alternatives to look at for each segment of the corridor. So if you look at all the different options we had, it was like 72 concepts. And so we needed to narrow that down and enable ourselves to do a more detailed traffic analysis, and transit analysis, and just get more data on the different options and how they worked. So I just wanted to kind of go over those really quickly with you all to keep you in the loop on that, and then we can talk about some next steps. But Josh kindly helped me out with some graphics here. So the first segment, this is from Ripley to Jordan Street, so the west end of the corridor, and the group voted to bring forward 2 options. One is looking at the center running bus lane, and then one is looking at bus lanes on the curb. So these graphics kind of show what that, obviously very, very high level concept, but like what that could look like for the corridor. The second corridor, it gets a little tighter here. This is from Jordan to Wheeler. This is where a portion of the corridor where we have a lot of residential, we have service roads to access those homes. And so the two concepts that were brought forward with this one mixed traffic. So that's basically just staying in the lane with traffic. It also would include some signal timing improvements, maybe some queue jump lanes to help move transit, but very similar to what you see out there today. And the other concept for this section was a hybrid. So the hybrid actually extends the curb, the center running lanes a little bit further to the east, where you don't have the residential properties, and then kind of shifts over to mixed traffic. These get very complicated. The segment 2B, this is from Wheeler to Roth. So this is kind of the really commercial section in front of Alexandria Commons, where you're down to 2 lanes in each direction. It's a pretty tight space. So the options that the group wanted to bring forward were, again, looking at mixed traffic, but also looking at this bi-directional concept where you basically have 2 buses running in 1 lane, but there would be kind of a hold point if they were coming at the same time. So it's a little complicated and hard to picture, but we're doing analysis to see if there's a real time saving benefit to that, or if you're going to have to be, if you're having high frequency transit, are you sitting there holding so much that it makes that not really a worthwhile option. And then the segment 3, which is kind of closer to the King Street Metro Station, the group voted to look at, again, the center running and the curb lanes for these segments. So what we're doing over the winter is targeted outreach. So we are reaching out to groups that were underrepresented in our initial outreach. We are reaching out to businesses, and then we are also doing more outreach to folks in civic associations, and then folks that depending on how these play out could be more impacted than others, and making sure we're getting that targeted outreach and that feedback during this time. We're going to be doing an update to council either this month or next month on this project, but also the other projects on Duke Street that are kind of all coming together to help achieve the vision that came out of the first phase of this project. And then once we have more analysis, we'll be able to go back out to the community and get more feedback. So the next meeting is in February. We'll be looking at curb features at that time. So depending on the space you have available, what do the sidewalks look like? Can you fit in bike lanes? Where do we put trees and streetscape? So talking about that with the advisory group, and really the next thing for you all, one, I would love for you to participate in this process, but also to think about when the board might want to provide input. So ultimately, I think the board is going to want to make a recommendation or endorsement to the board one way or another. I'm sorry, to council when they have to make their ultimate decision. There's also the opportunity, if you all want to provide input to the advisory group as they're selecting their preferred alternative, that's another option that would be earlier this spring for you all to weigh in. Again, it kind of comes down to the timing of when the analysis is done and when our meetings fall and when we're doing that community engagement, but that's something to think about. So we certainly don't have to do anything right now, but I just wanted to kind of give you all a heads up. That's where we are in the process, and we can figure out what makes sense for the board in terms of timing for recommendations.
That sounds good. I have a question. It's something I had made an assumption about, but I just want to clarify it with you. That the analysis in terms of the frequency of transit also includes accommodating all of the local service, so the 30 would be in that
Yes.
quarter as well. And
Yep.
so then does our staff participate in that analysis as well? Because I think we would certainly lean on them to understand it's going to have a huge impact on even existing dash operations. And I think we need to address that in any communication.
Yes, we have absolutely been working very closely with Dash staff on this, and right now, the assumption, we haven't done our operations plan yet, but the assumption is that whatever we design, any of the buses on the corridor would be using that facility. So if we have center running, Dash, WMATA would both be using those lanes. So whatever we design is going to be for all the buses to make it easier for riders to know, you know, we're going to be building really nice stations, whatever we do. So making sure people know, you know, these are the stations, and it could mean consolidation of some Dash stops. It also could mean some additional stops for WMATA. So we're looking at that, and the station spacing framework is something we talked about a little bit with the advisory group, but we needed to set that up so that they could build that into the analysis to see how, you know, how frequently the bus has to stop. And then that'll help us ultimately determine what the time is that it takes the bus to do the whole corridor.
Yeah, I definitely, we want to take any opportunity we have to participate. So I think, you know, you and Josh should continue to talk about this and when the appropriate time is to make
Sure.
a recommendation to the advisory group. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Yeah. The next one, always fun, Metro budget. So in December, the Metro budget came out. It is continually changing. I didn't put in actual amounts in here. We're really, you know, the city funds the operating portion of the Metro budget and the capital portion of the Metro budget. And so there's a board meeting, I believe, tomorrow night where they're discussing that. So we'll be able to bring more details forward. Typically, the board does do a letter, I believe, and we could do that at the next meeting once we have the final numbers from them. We're looking at a couple different they're looking at a couple different service changes and also some various fare changes to fare. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going into this budget. I didn't put it all in here. I can send you all information if you want to dive deeper. I'm trying to keep it high level because I don't have all of the numbers right now, but I'm happy to send any information to anyone that wants to get into this.
So our charge as a board, and maybe for Jesse, who's brand new, the first time going through this, is to specifically look at Metro Bus, that basically the city, when they redid our bylaws, said, oh, we don't actually have a board that actually advises council essentially on what Metro Bus service should look like. And so they kind of gave that to us. And so typically that's been what we've focused on when we've done letters going forward. And so I see your note indicates that there are no bus service changes that would impact Alexandria, at least in the proposed budget. But how does that, I know one of the priorities we've had in the past, and I know that the mayor shares this as well, was getting the 11Y back, which is running now temporarily as a yellow line mitigation strategy. So is that scheduled to end in May and then it's not funded in the next budget cycle? And is that something that we might want to advocate against?
You might, they might be bringing that up at the board meeting tomorrow.
Okay,
night.
okay. So we'll know more next month, because
Yes.
that's kind of just proposed. So it would be anything on fares that affect buses, and then service would be kind of things that we would advocate for in a letter.
Right. So, I mean, bringing the 11Y back is definitely an option that it's just, we have to pay for it. So figuring out if the funding of that, and how that works, just lump it into our WMATA bill.
Well, and with Fairfax too, I'm sure, because they actually are probably more, I would imagine more people there are using it here, although it's very helpful service.
Right, and it would be a regional route, so all the jurisdictions.
Okay.
would fund it. Mhm.
So that would help blunt at least the impact a little to us.
Yes, to us, whether others want to pay for it that aren't benefiting from the services. Probably the debate.
So a related question, sort of in terms of our charge of also thinking about Metro bus service. When we do our ridership surveys, when we look at the data, when we look at where Dash is serving, do we then sort of like map the uncovered areas onto areas covered by WMATA? And then sort of extrapolate from that how we may then want to interact with WMATA for coverage? Is that sort of just an ongoing part of your planning process?
Yeah, and a big part of it is also the collaboration between the WMATA planning teams and the Dash planning teams. So like when the new network was rolled out and the transit vision plan was worked on, WMATA was in the room for that. And so we're also going to be in the room for their bus network redesign work. And so there were some strategies that to shift some areas to be covered by WMATA in order to reallocate some Dash resources and whatnot. And so that coordination is an ongoing
That's
thing,
great.
as each entity works on those various plans.
Lastly, I just want to give you an update on a project that we have had on the books for a very, very long time. So it's exciting that this is getting awarded finally, but we've had a bicycle parking at transit. It's been a capital project that's we've been working on for a number of years and have just hit hurdle after hurdle, but finally it's been awarded for construction. So what this project is going to do is basically installing bike racks and bike fix-it stations at a number of transit locations, but also some public facilities. So just improving access for different options for access to get to the bus and metro station. So it'll be all constructed this spring.
Cool. That's great.
And thank you, Hillary, for your report. Just before we move into other board member reports and updates, there was a piece of written correspondence that I meant to address during public comment that was included as addendum to our board packet. It was a letter. I'm just pulling it up on my phone, so I have the sender's name. It was from Ian McBunny, who lives in the Northridge neighborhood. And the letter was addressed to me, dealing with some feedback and observations about how the new Dash network serves as neighborhood electrification of the Dash fleet, and specifically support of mobile apps. Martin and I have had a little bit of correspondence through email, and what I thought was most appropriate, because this is the sort of these are comments that staff engage with frequently as they do their outreach in the community, that I basically refer the letter to staff so that they could follow up with this individual. It was a very thoughtful letter. If you haven't had a chance to read it, he is someone who should be applying for board seat at some point here in the future. But you know, it really what I appreciate about it is that there's strong support for Dash service in neighborhoods, even if it's not exactly how we did our plan, and then also just the engagement, the understanding of what it means as a critical service and lifeline to the community. So I appreciate staff working on a response and engaging with Mr. McFarland. So thank you. Other board members and updates. Many of us serve on other boards, commissions, and groups, and updates that may be helpful for us to. All right, I'm not hearing any more. Welcome. We just did other board member updates. Anything from the Transportation Commission you wish to share with the group? Not so. You want to take
Not
that
at
from
the
us?
moment, but I can update everyone with an email maybe. Yeah.
Okay, or next month. That's
Or next month, yeah,
Thanks,
I'll do
thanks, thanks for being here.
Jeez.
All right, I'll turn this over to Josh for the general manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect timing.
My report this month will be brief, and it is specific to the board retreat. So if you're counting, there are 3 board-related events going on in February. One being the retreat on the 1st, the second being the February board meeting, and the third being the stockholders meeting on the 14th. So if you get sick of seeing me that month, I won't be offended. So I just wanted to recap with you the plan for that retreat. It will take place at the Dash headquarters, and it will be from noon to 5 p.m. With lunch provided, recognizing that we'll be asking you all to come over the lunch hour. Once we have the board assembled and ready to go, we'll get started. Our facilitator will be there and ready to go. Our facilitator is also asking when it comes out to you via email, if it hasn't already gotten to your inbox, to complete the communication style assessment, what's called a DISC, which some of you are, I think, indicated last month you're familiar with. which is a particularly helpful tool we used in helping to provide us with some tools and resources and helping to further enhance the work of the board and the communication of the board. When you take that, a pro tip is don't think about it. Take it and be honest and just answer and keep going. Don't spend a lot of time because you'll tend to, if you overthink it, you'll mess up the assessment tool and your assessment will be a little weird. So I've had 2 people in my career do that. And they said they spend an hour on it. And I said, why did it take you an hour to do this? But anyway, no, it's a great tool and we look forward to your participation. The agenda is indicated as above, and the agenda was revised from our last communication, helping to identify what are the focuses. The facilitator should also be scheduled or being scheduled to talk with each of you in advance of that retreat to help make sure that the content and materials and use of your time is productive. So please work with Beth to schedule that as soon as you can, so we can make sure that everybody has had that opportunity before that date. So we look forward to it. I think it will be a great opportunity outside of a traditional board meeting for you all to have some time together to better understand each other and how to be efficient and effective as board members and with each other as you navigate various different decisions now and in the future.
Does anyone, I haven't gotten the disc yet. Has anyone received it? Okay.
She said she was gonna send it after this meeting, so.
Oh,
we're just direct-
Got it. After this.
Find and forward along previous disc results.
You may be able to do that. You could talk to her. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Josh. Edward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My updates tonight will be pretty brief since our financial position has not changed much since my report last month. Through November, our financials indicate a year-to-date deficit of $905,000 with a projected year-end deficit of just under $902,000. I will point out that by design, certain parts of our budget do project a year-to-date deficit, which is eventually offset by our application of the TRIP grants funding. So through this time of the year, we had projected a year-to-date deficit of just about $750,000, with the first application of the TRIP grant being in January. Fuel and lubricants remains our largest pressure on the budget. We've had projected our budget at $2.40 per gallon of diesel. Through November, that was above $4. We have seen the price come down in December. However, we're keeping our projection at $4 per gallon to hedge against any future increases in the fuel costs. Next slide. I do want to make the board aware that I've been working on changing the way that we project our future months in the monthly reporting. Previously, our forecast was very linear, kind of evenly distributed across every month. That didn't necessarily give us a true picture of where we were year to date, and it neglected things such as 3 payroll months. So this is a small piece of a larger table that I hope to include in the board packets moving forward. So this gives a picture of kind of our year-to-date actuals. So this is through November, with December and January being forecasted months. So what this hopes to achieve is projecting such as the timing of certain grant applications, reflect accurately 3 payroll months, and then other certain things like quarterly incentive bonuses that get paid out to our operators. You'll also notice that previously wages was one line item that included all wages, including overtime. Because operations overtime has been such a budget item, I've now broken that out separately so that can be so you can see the impact of operations overtime. So this new format is something I hope to have in the packets moving forward. And as we move throughout the year, the future months will be adjusted based on trends we've seen.
Oh, you're fine.
And should help us to better understand the position we are in year to date and to look at the future months more accurately. And so this new format also comes into play in the other tables that you'll be used to already seeing in your packets previously. In that the year-to-date actuals will reflect this table. For future months and our current position. So this is just, as I mentioned, a snippet of kind of a larger forecast that will be in the packets moving forward. But I wanted to present it to the board today to kind of give a explanation of how we've adjusted our forecasting and kind of what's to come, more or less. And then this is our standard year-to-date table that you'll be familiar with. And then, as I mentioned, the budget numbers for that reflect the new way that we've made the more true budget projections that gets away from the former linear formatting. And with that, I'll open up to any questions.
I just wanted to observe the overtime that's trending in the right direction, be addressed in your written report.
Yes, yeah, the overtime, there was we have looked at efforts to incorporate some overtime planning that came into effect with the October bid, so that was seen somewhat in November. Additionally, we have had some success in bringing on more operators. And so from October to November, the operations overtime did decrease by about 20%. That is trending in the right direction.
And fuel had been trending in the right direction. I think it's stepped back up a little bit.
So through December, it has really trended in the right direction. That, since we only have the November actuals, that's not been presented yet. Again, I'm keeping the future months at $4 per gallon, but to give you an example, the maintenance department did let me know that yesterday our fuel delivery was $3.16. So it is trending in the right direction.
16,
16, 1 6, yeah.
And how long does that, we get fuel delivered, at what frequency?
So our fuel prices are locked in, I believe it's the first and the third Monday. So those prices are valid.
Okay.
Kind of that's our period that those prices. are
Okay,
valid.
so we have a 2-week period, which our
Yes.
fuel is at 36. Great.
Yes.
There was that $300,000, almost $300,000 variance on the parts that we expected. Is that due to sort of, is something wearing out faster than you guys projected, or is it supply chain?
So there's a combination of factors into that, and I've been meeting with our maintenance department to try to look into what's causing that. Some of it is parts failing faster than anticipated. Some of it, a small portion of it, has been the need to replace things due to accidents that were less than anticipated. But the major drivers for it are supply chain issues and then just inflationary pressures. Now, as I mentioned, I've been meeting with the maintenance department. We're trying to look at ways to limit that overage, as well as we do have a grant that covers hybrid parts. We're trying to look back and see if any of the things we've done year to date could potentially be covered by that grant as well.
The accelerated rate of wear that you described, is that on a particular series bus or is that just across the board on the non-electric side?
I don't have that answer, but
Okay.
I can look into that. Yeah.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
believe it's more widespread, but I'll bring that answer.
No, I was curious whether it's focused on a particular model that we have in our fleet.
I'll get that answer.
Thank you.
Most of the electric buses are new enough that they're probably still under warranty in a large part. Most of our buses have at least a 1 year, right? The first year is bumper to bumper, basic. 2 years, the first 2 years are bumper to bumper. So, and we're continuing to look at also making sure that we've captured all of the expenses. I know Edward's been talking with the team about making sure that every repair has been reimbursed or is addressed under the warranty, because there is the opportunity for us to perform some warranty work and have a manufacturer reimburse us for that too. So. Certainly helps us when the buses are new in that regard.
Yeah. And then I think just the last thing I'd like to observe, looking at that, you guys mentioned the overtime, and it's like we're 600,000 over year to date so far. And, our last meeting, we had that great presentation on sort of the training and recruitment pipeline. And, I would just encourage you guys, when we look at, the money, obviously we will always spend some money on overtime, but this full amount that we are spending, like, we should think of a portion of that as representative of an investment that we could make in doing more on the training and recruitment side. to head off future expenditures of overtime. So I think sort of that number to me could be a little bit of instructive in terms of like what else we might want to consider doing to accelerate the development of staff so that we get sort of break the curve of how much you all are relying on overtime as you outlined last meeting.
I'm excited that we have Stephanie here along with Martin, Stephanie is our Director of Safety and Security. She's also currently our Director of Training. She's wearing both hats. And has some updates on some of the efforts that we've been making from a recruitment perspective and training perspective. So your question is very timely and appropriate. I think to your point, I'm hopeful that we're going to really start to see the effects of some of these things. Of course, our reports kind of lag a couple months, so it's a little hard to have a true picture of what's happening today. But I feel pretty optimistic about what I've been seeing and hearing from our team. So.
Yeah, and I would, just on that point, would love, we talked last month about the job fair that we had, and so some of those folks are probably in training classes now. It'd be interesting to know as those folks get out on the road, if the retention there was different than, say, other methods that we've recruited to know, what we yielded, because I mean, you got a lot of candidates through the door, and it's great to know, how they've worked out as they get ready to go into operations service. So love that feature update. I think that's all we have for you, Edward. Thank you so much. Thank you. So turn it over to Martin.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Got two planning items on the agenda tonight, both informational items, neither require board action. First is an update on our ridership performance. As you can see on the graphic on our screen, we have a new version of our month-by-month ridership that Josh and I have put together in hopes of better conveying and better emphasizing the great story that we have to tell about our ridership over the last 15 months. So as you've seen in the past, this is month by month for the last 7 fiscal years. The light gray, I'll call them skyscrapers in the background, those are basically the pre-COVID years, month by month. So that's basically FY17, FY18, FY19. You can see month by month how we did in those years. And that kind of gives you an idea of what the typical ridership pattern is, the seasonality of it. You can see the dip in the winter months, December, January, and then back up in the spring and fall. So that kind of gives you a baseline to work off of. Jumping into COVID, the red bars you can see are the first 4 months of COVID, where we kind of hit rock bottom there in April 2020. And then you move the dark gray bars, kind of a flat line across the bottom, that was 2021. And then the green bars, which was last fiscal year, FY22, you can see the upward trend there. We have the new network and free fares that we introduced in September 2021, which is called out by the box on the left. And then we had a dip in January, February due to Omicron, but you generally see a large upward trend continuing into June of this past year, and then entering FY23, the current fiscal year, which is shown with the blue line at the top. So the blue line at the top is our last 5 months of ridership, and you can see that we are trending above, not only at, but above what we had pre-COVID. So really strong story to tell there. October, November, you can see November we're well above where we were. So we are seeing that seasonal dip, but it's not as pronounced as what we've seen before the pandemic. 2 additional points on that, as Josh has mentioned in the past, we've still not seen the full federal return to work for the federal workforce. Federal government is still largely working from home, so that's perhaps limiting our ridership potential there. And also the King Street Trolley, which was one of our biggest ridership drivers before the pandemic, is still at or below 50% of typical ridership levels. So really strong ridership picture, and then also these other factors that could potentially have us even higher.
So I'm going to suggest that a lot of that ridership on the trolley just switch to the 30 and 31 because, whatever comes first, and you have very frequent service that's also free. So
yeah,
I think it's hard to, say that there are any trends that any conclusions you can draw from that. Right, in and of itself.
Right, and I appreciate that point. We've looked into it. I think the 2 big factors are certainly that you've got free service on King Street, so you can hopefully by now people figure out you just jump on whatever bus is coming along because they're all free. And then also we've also changed the trolley routing, and no longer goes all the way down the waterfront. That was a recent change that has also potentially led to decreased ridership. I think I was, and I want to look into this a little further, but in terms of tourism, I'm curious if Visit Alexandria is showing tourism's come back to the point was pre-pandemic, which could also be an interesting point of reference for its ridership numbers.
Hotels have not. It was really close on the hotel, like the revenue that was generated by, let's say July, August, but we've definitely seen it. I mean, this is definitely a slower through the fall, but it was still down 10 to 20%. That's just on the revenue. So, I mean, the bodies that doesn't speak to, but
Reach out to this housing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Martin, would it be possible at any point to see, like, looking at maybe the pre-COVID in this, like, looking at this service hours and how that, like, what our service hours were pre-COVID generally versus what they are now? Because I know we're running more service more frequently to see how that plays in with ridership.
Yeah, we could bring back a previous graph. We had to kind of have two lines. One showed the service quantity and the other showed the ridership.
Yeah.
Kind of trending upwards. So we could bring that back, if that's something you guys would like to see. We also in our KPI dashboards, though, I'll bring it in a second, where we have avoidance per wrecking hour.
Mm.
So it kind of gets it.
Yeah.
Kind of measuring the ridership, the quantity of service, and kind of an efficiency metric. And I can show you that, but that is generally going up as well.
Right, but our dashboard wouldn't have that prior information to compare it to, like,
From pre-pandemic,
Yeah.
you're right, that is from last year, so it wouldn't be pre-pandemic. Okay, any other questions on this before I move on to the dashboards?
How are we counting the ridership? Is that a technology installed on the buses yet? That you mentioned at previous meetings for like boardings, the AI image or something that's being created?
Yes, so we completed our automated passenger counter retrofit project this past fall.
Okay.
So now all dash buses have the 3D video sensors on top of each door. So they're able to capture boardings and lightings at a very more accurate and granular level. We are collecting that data. However, we are also still collecting fare box data. So if you board a bus, you'll see the driver push the button to designate your boarding. We are currently still relying on the fare box. We're going through a process right now with National Transit Database to get certified on our automated passenger counters. We expect that by June of this year, we'll complete that process. So that by FY24 start, we will be able to fully rely on these automated passenger counters.
Thank you.
is it fairly consistent what you're seeing with the fare box versus what the counters are showing you?
It's in the right ballpark. We're still kind of tweaking because sometimes the automated counters discard certain data because it looks weird or something. And so we're trying to tweak the settings on that to make sure that it's discarding the right data that should be discarding and holding on to good data.
Yeah, that very cool tool that Martin has showed us. I learned this just this week. He was talking to our team about it, and I didn't realize that it actually corrects for errors in the technology and helps to fill in those gaps in an effective way, which I think is really, it's helpful to know that it helps you to rely on the technology, knowing the technology will fail at some point. You've got a system that can help account for that, you know. Skeptic in me.
Okay, so last item we have here is the KPI dashboard updates. You guys have seen a couple versions of these previously, but this is the November 2022 dashboard data. One caveat to provide this that the format of this and the content of this is starting to kind of solidify. We are still talking as a senior leadership team about how we want to use these boards. The extent to which most of these are available on the Dash website, but we're still trying to figure out the extent to which we want to bring these to the board every month. There are some boards on here that we may want to use internally more so than we would share publicly, but we're still fine tuning that a little bit. We've actually got an all-day retreat workshop, with the senior leadership team to talk about KPI dashboards and how we're using them, what we're collecting, if there's ways that we can use them better and how they should be employed through the public website, the board, and internally. But we're happy to take any questions or feedback as I go through these. So the first of the six boards I think I'm showing tonight is customer service. And I'm just going to highlight one or two things on each of these boards, but feel free to stop me if anything jumps out at you. Customer service, we did in November have a uptick in number of complaints. We had 16 valid complaints, which is high for us. You can see that, and we also had 0 accommodations, which was, I think, the first time. Joseph, is it the first time in over a year that we didn't have any accommodations in a month? That's correct. Okay, so that was a little unusual, and because of that, we had a lower CSI customer satisfaction index. We usually try to be above 80. It was down at 77.1 for the month of November. Looking a little deeper, the bottom center graph shows the complaints by type over the last few months, and I know it's a little hard to read from here, but the yellow and purple bars are the ones that are probably the highest for November, and those are unsafe driving and missed stops. So I know our safety team is working on addressing the safe driving issues and probably look into those. The missed stops, I think we believe are due to two factors. One is that with the daylight savings starting getting darker, so missed stops are when a driver bypasses a stop that has someone waiting, usually on accident. So if it gets darker, sometimes that happens a little more often. And then secondly, we had a bid change in the end of October, and so again, new drivers on new routes who may not have been as familiar or aware of where the stops were in that first week or two. So unfortunately, we think that's what might have happened, but we're sure looking to address that. And unfortunately, I think December data was looking a lot better than this. So we'll have much better results to share when we come back next month.
So Martin, I guess that leads then to the question, what are you going to do differently with then future bids and routes changing to ensure that we don't see upticks at the start of a quarter? And you're right, I mean, we haven't seen this in other quarters too, so maybe it's a bit of an anomaly, but is there something that we can do operationally, since this happens every quarter, that there are adjustments and, that's something you want to think about and come back to?
Yeah, we haven't talked specifically about it, but I think there could be some things that we emphasize, maybe handing out route materials again. We have some training, a big packet of route description, making sure that operators have easy access to that during the bid. We haven't done a great job with that, so.
And are we like updating our bus stops or reviewing them to make them like better lighting and seating? Is that happening in the city?
We did an inventory of all of the bus stops in the city. So that we can figure out where we need to place better amenities. I don't know that lighting was.
Was
on
it part of that?
I don't think lighting was a part. I think we did our inventory during the day.
I think it
Did
would be
it?
helpful.
Maybe.
With lighting.
Maybe.
Are you,
Well, I was just gonna add that the data that we're collecting now on the safety side, we may be able to identify if there's a trend in a particular stop that keeps being missed at night, for example, where we could then flag this one maybe a light issue. So it's something that we could certainly look into going forward. If that's actually-
yeah, that would be great, because in front of my place, the lights were out for like months. Dominion had to do some underground work. And you couldn't see the bus stop. It was like scary getting off the bus, because I was like, am I gonna step on something and like break my ankle? And so they finally fixed that lighting. But like, if you can't see it, I see bus drivers like missing a stop.
Martin, you might have explained this to us when you first rolled this out, but that's where you're great. But remind me, are you uniquely coding all of these, or could some of these be nested? So I guess what I'm saying is, so, when we look right here, the end size is like 6, right? So there was 6 missed stops. Is that potentially 6 different people on the same bus complaining about one incident, or is that 6 different incidents? And the reason I'm asking is I obviously feel like the intervention is different, right? Like if it's 6 different incidents, that to me indicates that there needs to be some sort of like staff-wide engagement around. If it's like one bus, one time, but a bunch of people made the effort to complain, that is a different response. I'm just curious how these are coded in terms of uniqueness. Yeah, I would assume that those are unique incidents, but I mean, we do look at the data. Joseph and his team looks at the data very closely. We actually have a monthly meeting where we go over a lot of the complaints we had today, actually. And we look for trends. So if we saw, missed stop at the same place, multiple.
Yeah, so
like that.
those are unique. Those are unique.
Got it. Okay, so it's events, not like human interactions. It's more actual incidents or events. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Reliability is the next dashboard I have here. You can see that the big metric of reliability is on-time performance, which is measured by the percent of trips that arrive at their stop on time, which is usually about between 1 minute early and less than 5 minutes late. So you can see that we're at 85, almost 86%, which is above our 85% goal, which is obviously a good thing. The other thing I wanted to call out, you can see the red box at the bottom, missed trip percentage. That is highlighted in red. Our target is 0.02% missed trips, and we've usually been pretty good at hitting that, especially before this year. Due to staffing shortages over the last few months, we've had more and more missed trips. However, this 0.1% does represent a good trend. You can see it's 49% to the good from last month. So we're actually trending better as we get more and more staffing, more and more operators, and have fewer overruns and missed trips. So still not where we want it to be, but heading in a good direction for now.
I'll follow up on that. I know we had some discussion last month too about that, and I think as part of the operations report that we had received. Is there an effort to try to tweet or provide some update when there's a missed trip? I know we talked about specifically trying to have those on routes that have very frequent service, so that people aren't waiting, say a route that runs hourly, that would obviously be a huge concern, even half hourly. But is there a way that we're trying to at least then communicate once we know a trip is going to be missed, so that if someone does have, say, can check on their phone and want to know what's going on, that they see it? I assume then the trip just disappears from the real-time data, so that could, but that could also mean, well, is the system working or not? But then they get confirmation. I don't know how that, yeah, if you could talk about how that.
Sure, yeah, thank you for the question. So, I guess two things. One is that, we do have it's basically a messaging platform where we have the dispatchers, anytime they know there's gonna be a trip miss, they send a message to our basically chat that includes all of the communication folks, so social media, customer service. So everybody knows that this trip is being missed. Here's what the effect is on customers. And so then our customer service team and our social media team can put out the notifications to let folks know what's the impact. In terms of how we sign, a lot of times it's kind of the last minute thing where there's like an operator just didn't show up because they were sick or something, and we just don't, we call through all our standby operators like that. So it's a little bit hard to know in advance and kind of strategize. If we know in advance, yes, we do typically try to go on routes like the 35 or the 31 to 30 that kind of are a little bit frequent, just for the reasons you mentioned.
You're saying you might not know until 5 minutes before a trip is supposed to pull out of the starting point. But I think it's still worthwhile to try to broadcast that, because you might have people where then be picked up 30, 40 minutes later who can make other arrangements. I realize too, if this is happening nights and weekends when you don't have staff that are updated, because your social media is not updated, monitored 24/7. But if there is a way to kind of then put some out, or maybe how WMATA does that, because they seem to, other systems seem to be figuring out how to put that on their social media, at least to send out as that's happening. I mean, granted, it is a very small percentage, but it is certainly one of the things that is, as a rider and a user, is most concerning when you build your day around, your system and being able to get there. So just a thought, if there are ways we can kind of improve how we're distributing that information to the public.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, ridership, we've already talked a little bit at a high level, month by month. This dives a little bit deeper. You can see that the left side shows the average weekday boarding. So on a typical day a weekday in November, we had almost 14,000 boardings, which is a little bit down from September, October, but still relatively high. 9,000 on Saturdays, 6,000 on Sundays. There's actually an error on the bar graph there. That's showing total boardings by weekday, by Saturday, and by Sunday. It usually supposed to average, so I apologize for that, but the trend is generally the same. September, October, November, kind of very high, but trending down with that seasonal decline during the holidays and colder months.
Right, looking at that 124,000 monthly ridership on line 35 and that being double the next highest, is that typical for a transit system to have one line that is literally double the next most popular line?
It's a good question. It's new for us.
Okay.
Before new network, we had basically Duke Street route was kind of our ATA, kind of 30 was our highest. Then we had a couple that were right behind it. So this is different.
Okay.
It would be that much higher. It's basically a third of our ridership.
Right, and that's kind of the reason I'm asking. I'm just wondering what story that tells us about sort of ridership. And
I think, obviously that's our most frequent route. 10 minutes a day on weekdays, 15 on weekends, serves the West End. I think it's just really a good indicator for the appetite for transit out there. Yeah. But I would say it's probably uncommon for, I guess it depends on the, like if you're in a town and there's one kind of main street, and the route on that might be a lot higher, it is unusual for us. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Josh, you go back. I did want to highlight for Heather, the 14.7 in the bottom right corner, that's the boardings per revenue hour that I was talking about earlier, but again, that's supposed to last year, not pre-COVID, so we can post some information on pre-COVID, boardings per revenue hour. Okay, got two more here. Safety and security. This one shows our preventable events. Anytime we have less than 7 preventable events a month, that's our goal. So we did achieve that goal in November. And you can see that there's kind of a downward trend in terms of events per 100,000 miles over the last couple of months. So that's also positive. And the last one here is a new one, and actually this is not in your packet, so apologize, that was omitted. But this is our HR recruitment dashboard. And this one tries to capture kind of our overall employment picture. The top top left graph shows our full-time operator headcount. We have a target of about 176 full-time operators based on the service we need to operate in our budget. And so you can see kind of the lighted upper portion of that graph shows that target. Currently, we're at 167. You can see in the speedometer there, bus operators 167 full-time out of the 176 that we need. That's still below where we want to be, but as we've talked about, it's a lot better than where we've been. For most of this year, we've been down in the 150s, which is why we've been missing trips. That's why we've been having so many challenges. So the fact that we're up to 167 is the highest we've been since I've been here. And that doesn't count the job fair. A lot of the results of the job fair will continue to increase that number. So good signs there. Bottom right shows dash turnover by department, turnover rate by department. We want to be below 2% on turnover rate. That's basically the number of departures, terminations, resignations divided by the total headcount of employees by department. And so you can see that we're mostly below 2%, but in some of the smaller departments like maintenance or admin, if we have one person leaving a month, that can spike up the turnover rate. So that's what you see in October, November there. And last, I will turn over to Stephanie, who's going to talk about our recruitment.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We're excited to show you this recruitment funnel. This has been a fun mini project for Martin and I, and Smith, our director of HR. As you can tell, it's very colorful, so we did have fun with it. As you know, when we talk about overtime, you guys know it's been high. We've been dealing with human power issues, workforce deficits. We wanted to show the recruitment side of what's going into that, what we're doing to try and repair that area. There are more than 5 categories that go into recruitment, but we wanted to condense some of it down just to make it a little more simpler. So I'll run through the 5 categories and then we can talk about more what you all want to know in the numbers that you see here. Obviously it's shaped because as people move through the process, we lose them. So that's why we have this upside down pyramid, but candidate interviews, that's going to be our total number of qualified applicants that make it all the way through to the panel interview. So that's people that go through the phone screen, the assessment, and the panel interview. So we had 89 people that made it to that stage. From there, we go into offers extended. So of those 89, at the conclusion of the panel interview, we extended 69 offers. From there, we have day 1 training. So that's who showed up for their first day of training, goes down to 36. Qualified training, we have 3 phases in our training program that we launched this past year. The first phase is the qualification phase. So that's where we determine who essentially is safe to drive. It's the hardest phase to get through, which is why we selected that category to be in the pyramid. And then we get down to of those qualified trainees, how many make it to graduation. So we can certainly unpack this just to give you all real quick the background of this data. This is from FY23. So it's classes that are completed that produce graduates FY23. So there were classes that were before this, it's not reflected last year in 2022. There's also 2 training classes still going from FY23 that's not reflected here because they're still in progress.
Talk to us a little bit about this, sort of the yield from 63 offers extended down to only getting 36 on day 1. Because to me, the rest of that pipeline makes sense, right? Like I think going from 36 to 27 actually just shows rigor in the training, like respect that. 27 to 25 actually feels really great that you're graduating most of your training, but I'd love to understand this offering 63 people and only 36 showing up for that first day.
It's a big drop off.
Yeah.
So before I answer the question, one of the reasons we do this exercise is to identify where the problem is, right?
Okay.
Where we're losing people.
Right.
So right away we saw it too. Good eye there. Everyone, I'll say this, a lot of people accept the offer. Showing up day 1, which occurs maybe 3 or 4 weeks later for when the offer is extended, is a whole nother thing. So we have approximately a month of time that goes by. A lot happens in that month with candidates that accept the offer. They find other jobs, they maybe lose interest, for example. Additionally, this is when the background check is going on, drug testing, review of licenses. So sometimes it's not them leaving us, it's us rescinding that offer and they're not coming in for day 1. We do deal with ghosting, as does any employee. We think they're coming and then they don't on Monday. So, but to your point, Mr. O'Connell, this is something that we're having conversations now together following this final funnel coming out to see if there's anything we can do on our end to consistently engage the applicant leading up to day 1. Because we don't, I'm not surprised to see this many drop off, to be honest, but we would like to see that number get smaller. So or that difference to get smaller.
Yeah, I would almost wonder, like, are there some elements of like the initial stages of the training that would be appropriate to move to be like concurrent with the background check process, where stuff that's not a consequential investment, we're not sort of losing anything if we do ultimately have to move on, but sort of is keeping them in contact with us, keeping them engaged is, sort of. It seems like some elements of that 3 or 4 week wait period are important and necessary, but I wonder, what can be done to kind of sort of increase the touch points that we have with these candidates.
Right, and it's a good point. That's something we're definitely exploring right now. I will say the wait period used to be a tad longer. HR and the safety department kind of consolidated our processes to fall in line together. So I'm doing drug testing and license reviews at the same time they're running background checks. So we have shortened that time period, which I think may have helped, but yeah, there's more to explore there as to how we can have more people show up the first day.
With the job fair where some of that, like the drug testing occurred, I thought at the site. So for those folks, was their period even further compressed before they started training?
So when it comes to drug testing, we can't test more than 30 days out. So at the job fair, we could only test applicants that were going to be showing up for our January 9th class. So for example, we did provide offers that day for our January 30th class, our February 21st class, couldn't drug test them then. That being said, it did make it easier for safety to go through their process. But I do wonder, we'll see how that plays out in our next funnel, as to whether that lack of engagement, because safety didn't have to talk to them to do a drug test, if that had any impact as to whether they came in day one.
This is really interesting. I work in HR, so this is fascinating. to me. So I appreciate the slide a lot.
This is very useful, actually, and I like that. So it depends, the way I was thinking about it is, obviously somebody applying for a job is in the market, right? It's not like they're coming here and that's the only opportunity they have, they're going multiple places, so the longer the wait period for them, the more they can be like kind of taken away by other offers and all that, so it's an interesting point, like you trying to find out what can we do, all that, so it's very good analysis.
We're a tough industry to get a job in, but I think also for a good reason.
Yeah.
Because we're a really safe industry.
Yeah.
We have a lot of things that we're doing that filter a lot of people out.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't always help us, but from the perspective of keeping fully staffed and being able to hit our overtime targets and everything else, but it's an area that I really appreciate Stephanie, the team and the HR team who aren't here in person today, but with the work that they do on this to try to make sure we have quality people, because that, my whole team agrees with me here, and I always say that hiring is the most important decision. Setting the stage for Dash and services, so I think we do. I give credit to the team for doing a great job in doing that, even though it's frustrating. I'm sure.
Well, it helps us see a little more of the frustration because those numbers are
Yeah.
things that we hadn't realized that drop off. And so that helps us understand more some of the staffing issues that go into the overtime. So, this is great.
And I do think we're starting to see, this is 25 graduates, so that, our deficit was something like 30 operators at the start of this period, right? So to graduate 25 people, we're currently down 9 as of today. We have 13 full-timers in training though, so we're technically plus if they all make it to graduation. And I think that's due just to the changes that we've made this past year, and you're seeing that in the numbers. You're seeing that overtime start to shift. And I would just finish by saying Mr. O'Connell made a good point earlier when we were talking about overtime investment. And that's something that we did do this past year, and the operations and training side is kind of having to work a little bit harder to get these graduates out so we could start seeing overtime come down on the operation side. So, but if there's no more questions, turn it back. Thank you.
So our next board meeting will be February 8th. We're going to be back at Dash headquarters, and the meeting of course starts at 5:30 p.m. I was going to tell a brief story because I thought this meeting actually was going to be a lot quicker than it was. So, but I'm going to tell the story anyway. Bill Hurd, the man who founded Dash and was Josh is talking a little bit about the story, was the founding, the vision behind Dash, had worked for Department of Transportation for years and founded Dash in retirement. was the board chair for over 20 years, and he ran very efficient meetings. He did not want a meeting to ever go over 60 minutes, and I don't think one ever did during his time here. We have since failed Mr. Hurd in that regard in many ways. And I thought tonight that we would make Mr. Hurd very proud, who has since passed away, very, very proud of us, but we didn't quite get there. The former general manager tells a story that I'm not sure, this might be apocryphal, but she claims that meeting was supposed to start. She wanted to run to the restroom. She had just arrived right before 5:30. And Mr. Hurd saw that she wasn't there, skipped over all the general manager pieces of the report and had adjourned the meeting within 3 minutes. We again have not lived up to Mr. Hurd's yet. But thank you. Tonight was a great discussion, and it's good to see everybody. And I learned a lot about the organization. So I appreciate all the reports tonight, and we'll look forward to we'll see each other at the retreat before then. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Jesse, second. Steve, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good night.
Bye, Brandy.